important that we learn how to reframe forgiveness. I think that when we talk about connectivity, I'm going back to, I'll just keep digging down my same lane. When we talk about connectivity to God and ourselves, we've not really been taught how to frame God as a forgiving God. Most of our culture, and I'm steeped in part of my research and doctorate work is in religion. And so we framed the greater God, the good, gracious God. We talk about him being good and love and long suffering, but we experience him as being a judge and with a gavel and a whip, and you got to live up to these standards, and he's very rigid and he's very stringent, which gives unforgiving. If we talk about material and so on, we know that there's some material that's very forgiving, and then there's some material that's unforgiving. We have embraced as a culture, a God who is not as forgiving, not as yielding. He's very black or white, heaven and hell, no gray areas, all of those different things. And so we interpret that and internalize that into ourselves, not being forgiving to ourselves, not being gracious and yielding to ourselves. Thus, we magnify that out to our population and to our connections where we're not forgiving. It's either you did it or you didn't. There's no grace. There's no, it's the law and the letter of the law. So I think that when we're talking about it's vital and it's important and it's pivotal, but I think the problem is that we've misaligned our framing for forgiveness. So the conversation, we know to forgive, but we don't know how to forgive because we haven't learned how to forgive ourselves. We haven't learned that we are forgiven, before we've even messed up. And so it's that framing that we need to be talking about, not the importance, not to dismantle the question, but to bring even more burden to the thought, because it's easy for us to shake our heads in a sense. Yes, it's very important, but our daily lives reflect that that is not how things work out. That's a espoused theory and not the theory in use, right? So I think that this is a necessary conversation, but go that extra mile and learn, what do you really feel about forgiveness? How do you feel forgiven? When do you know you are forgiven? What acts must I go through to be forgiven? Because again, we got to go to the altar, roll on the floor and speak in tongues and cast out devils before we feel in some of our churches. And I know I'm talking to the right people.
Yeah.
All right now. Yeah, I have a degree in seminary as well, so I can come down your lane. But I'm saying we've learned how we have to do all of these, jump through hoops and give blood and give tithes and offerings. And if I go to other religions, it's not that far different either in some of those. But then we internalize that in ourselves, and we feel like we got to sacrifice so much to be forgiven and to realign. Thus, we give it to others. That in order for me to get you back in good graces, you need to prove yourself. You need to do all that. And that's not the way that the Creator created it. That's not what pure forgiveness. He went to a cross before you were born. So, of course, you didn't have to do anything to be forgiven. That's the same grace we need to internalize so that we can give it out.
Say that.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor.